I'm your host, Slim Mohammed Rafi, and here is my YouTube channel, Zamir Universal. My dear fellows, I, as a human being, alive in the 20th century, witnessing the genocide and the greatest cruelty and massacre in the history of mankind, sharing my how I feel hurt and how I hate the Jews, and especially these Jews which we are witnessing now. We had never heard that Jews are so cruel, so full of crimes, having no care, considering everybody else animals and themselves as the God's chosen people. Could you ever imagine God choosing such dirt, filth, and scum of the society? When you look and keep a picture of Netanyahu and his war cabinet and those people who with him, and I think you must include Joe Biden and Blinken in this, because they provided money, funds, bombs, and in their heart they wanted this massacre, because the date you heard the Qatari minister who was negotiating this deal, he said the same deal which now has been accepted and brought ceasefire was finalized in December 2023. Imagine how much bloodshed, how much destruction of homes, houses, hospitals, universities, schools, and mosques. When you look at the devastation caused by these criminals, we never saw that they were burned in the incinerator or gas chambers, but we sympathized with them. And I am sorry to say that we wrongly sympathized with a nation whose graves are dug, who are the most hated and despised people in the world. This is the only nation which has been thrown out of the 48 countries of the world. So there has to be something abnormal. And so there must be a breed somewhere between an animal that too who is dirty, filthy, and like pig, has no, even animals you see compassion in that. You must have seen in the National Geography magazine that even the cheetah mother or the lioness playing with a little cub, because would not kill them, but they loved to decapitate the newborns, to kill them in the incubator so that shut off the oxygen. They took pride. You see the idea of people, so they are animals. And now when you people collected all those who bragged and put there on the social media, there is a list of thousands of the idea of soldiers who went into Gaza committing such atrocities. Why on earth they should not be hunted and hanged? Why should Netanyahu not be hanged by their own people? Why International Court of Justice? Why Hamas? Why Hezbollah? Why Iran? Or Turkey or Iraq or anybody else or Houthis should do this thing? Why can't the good Jews who have conscience, who believe this was wrong, whether they live in California, they live in New York, they live in Europe, they live in Ireland, they live in Belgium or in Spain,
that lit the fuse in the ongoing feud between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, a fallout that ultimately brought about a ceasefire in Gaza after an agonizing 16 months of relentless bloodshed. Sachs, never one to sugarcoat his words, praised Trump for ignoring the powerful Israeli lobbyier move many considered political suicide and focusing instead on saving lives. He argued this approach wasn't just humanitarian but pragmatic, even for the long-term survival of Israel itself. By pushing for a ceasefire, Trump, according to Sachs, aligned himself with a growing number of Jews who are deeply disillusioned with the current state of affairs in the Middle East and who've consistently distanced themselves from the violence and fanaticism of religious Zionism. Down on his accusation of genocide in Gaza, pointing the finger squarely at the deep state, which he claims has perpetuated the bloodshed despite widespread international condemnation and even an ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu. The word genocide is a loaded term, and its application to Gaza is fiercely debated. However, the sheer scale of destruction, the disproportionate use of force, and the targeting of civilian infrastructure in repeated Israeli military campaigns have led many, including Sachs, to use it. For him, this isn't just about semantics. It's about holding powerful actors accountable for policies that have devastated an entire population. The historical context here is vital. Since its creation in 1948, Israel has justified its actions as necessary for its survival, invoking the Holocaust as a moral shield against criticism. While this narrative has garnered immense sympathy and support, particularly in the United States, it has also been used to deflect scrutiny of its treatment of Palestinians. Sachs's argument that the deep state and the Israeli lobby have manipulated US foreign policy to serve Israel's interests at the expense of broader regional stability challenges, a long-standing pillar of American-Israeli relations. For decades, US presidents have walked a tightrope, balancing support for Israel with the need to maintain alliances with Arab states. Trump's decision to push back against this dynamic, as Sachs sees it, represents a potential turning point. Trump sharing Sachs's video wasn't just a moment of personal drama between two political heavyweights, it was a signal. By amplifying Sachs's critique of Netanyahu, Trump made it clear that he's willing to break with traditional US deference to Israel. This has far-reaching implications. For Israel, it raises the specter of losing its most powerful allies' unconditional support. For the Middle East, it opens the door to a new balance of power, one where countries like Iran might gain more influence. And for Palestinians, it offers a glimmer of hope that their plight is finally being recognized on the world stage, even if only indirectly. Yet, the question remains, was this ceasefire a genuine step towards peace, or just another pause in an endless cycle of violence?
Israel has been under the UN Charter as an occupying power and under Geneva since 1967. It has never fulfilled its responsibilities as an occupying power, never intended to fulfill them. In fact, it has dispossessed the Palestinians of their lands, of their orchards, destroyed their homes, killed their children. It is an irresponsible, under the law, occupying power. Therefore, the Palestinians had every right to do what they did on October the 7th. That is not very comfortable in Washington to make that kind of statement, especially not amongst Jewish Americans or people who are tightly tied to Israel. But it is the facts. And I can't wait to see what the judge says when he reads this case, if we get it to go forward. But that's how entrenched we are in it, because we are, as Gideon Levy from Haaretz has said so many times, every time that F-16 flies over Gaza and drops that 250-pound bomb and kills that child, you are guilty, America. You are as guilty as Bibi, as anybody in that right-wing Likud administration. You are just as guilty because you are enabling it. They could not do it without you. They are drawing on our largest war reserve stockpile in the world, which is in Israel.
Of Friday, particularly the veto at the Security Council, the Secretary's meeting with the Arab and Islamic foreign ministers, and then the emergency determination on the tank munitions to Israel. I'm just wondering, are you guys aware of how isolated you are?
So I would answer that by saying every time we engage with one of our partners in the region and our partners around the world, what the Secretary hears is the indispensability of American leadership, both in helping to resolve this conflict and bring an end to it that guarantees the destruction of Hamas, and in planning for the days and weeks and months and years to come. Now, that doesn't mean that we have agreements with everyone in the region about the best way forward. Obviously, we don't. There are a number of countries that have called for a ceasefire. We've made clear that while we support humanitarian pauses, we think a ceasefire that would allow the leadership of Hamas that plotted and planned October 7th to continue to carry on in Gaza and plan future attacks is one that's unacceptable related to this conflict.
What happened on Friday and Saturday and over the weekend, you have one country that stands
So I think
what
if
you're
you've
doing.
looked at the results of our diplomacy over the past few months, you cannot take any one piece of data, be it a UN Security Council vote or anything else, and say that that represents the sum and total of our diplomacy, because it doesn't. There are other things that we've done in working with the G7, with partners in the region that we'll continue to work on.
So the bottom line is you're not concerned that that it appears the rest of the world, with the exception of Israel,
I would say
is angry at you and is not, is unhappy with the position that the administration has taken, and that is American leadership.
I would say that
Correct.
this conflict has posed a number of obstacles for Israel, for countries in the region, for the United States, for the entire
The region. And Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, has demonstrated a leadership in these negotiations, and we see the way he fought for a deal to happen. And I believe if this will continue to be the attitude and the approach for the next 4 years, we can create a lot of good things for the region.
I want you to think about the role played by Blinken and Biden in committing these unspeakable atrocities against Palestinians in the last 15 months. Had they agreed to this ceasefire formula in December 2023, hundreds of thousands of innocent lives could have been saved. These two war criminals literally have the blood of tens of thousands of children and babies on their hand. Children and babies who would have been alive today. Think of Hind Rajab, the 6-year-old angel who Israeli terrorists fired more than 350 bullets to murder her. She would have been alive today, along with her family members. Children and babies who were burnt alive by Israeli barbarians and savages, they would have been alive today. Gaza's health infrastructure, schools, places of worship, universities, and other places of educational learning, they would have been intact. The destruction and carnage that Israeli terrorists caused in Rafah last summer, Palestinians may have been spared from these brutalities. So it's clear that Biden and Blinken consciously supported Israel's genocidal campaign and blocked every single effort to bring these war crimes to an end. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, this deal wouldn't have been possible. So what has the Qatari Prime Minister said? The Qatari Prime Minister just told Sky News that the framework of the ceasefire deal signed this week is exactly the same that Qatar and Egypt and other Arab countries had presented in December 2023. Yes, way back in December 2023. So genocidal Joe and butcher of babies Blinken have once again been lying that the current framework is what Biden had proposed on May the 31st, 2024. Listen to the Qatari Prime Minister.
This is the framework that we have signed 2 days ago. Is the same framework that we agreed on in December 23, which is basically 13 months of a waste of negotiating details that has no meaning and doesn't worth any single life that we lost in Gaza or any single life of those hostages that lost their life.
नाज़रीन, इसराइली वज़ीर आज़म हाउस की जानिब से जैसे ही जंगबंदी मुआहदे पर अमल दरामद की तस्दीक की गई, उसके बाद से ही पूरी दुनिया से फ़लस्तीन के लिए पॉजिटिव पैगामात का सिलसिला शुरू हो गया और पूरी दुनिया ने इस जंगबंदी मुआहदे का खैर मकदम किया और इसके अलावा जो है बहुत से पॉजिटिव मैसेज जो हैं वो फ़लस्तीन के लिए आए चुके हैं। हमने आपको पहले ही बता दिया था कि जैसे ही जंगबंदी मुआहदे पर अमल दरामद शुरू होगा उसके बाद बहुत तेज़ी से तब्दीलियाँ रौनमा होंगी और पूरी दुनिया से फ़लस्तीन की आज़ाद मुमलिकत के लिए आवाज़ें उठना शुरू हो जाएंगी और अब वो वक्त दूर नहीं है कि जब फ़लस्तीन दुनिया के नक्शे पर एक आज़ाद रियासत के तौर पर नमूदार होगा। ये सारी खबरें हैं और जो दुनिया भर में का स्टेटमेंट सामने आया है। ट्रंप ने नाज़रीन इसराइल और हमास के दरमियान जो जंगबंदी मुआहदा है उसका खैर मकदम किया है। उन्होंने कहा है कि कैदियों की रिहाई का जो सिलसिला है वो शुरू हो चुका है और यहाँ पर इस मुआहदे के तहत जो ख़वातीन जो कैदी हैं उनको भी रिहा किया जाएगा। इसी तरह नाज़रीन पोप फ्रांसिस का स्टेटमेंट भी सामने आया है। उन्होंने गज़ा जो जंगबंदी है उस पर उसका खैर मकदम किया। उन्होंने कहा कि फौरी तौर पर जंगबंदी का एहतराम करना चाहिए और डील के सालसियों का उन्होंने शुक्रिया अदा किया है। उन्होंने बैनुल-अक़वामी बरादरी से मुतालबा किया है कि वो इसराइल और फ़लस्तीन को सही और 2 रियासती हल तक पहुंचने में मदद करें। अच्छा, उन्होंने मज़ीद कहा कि तमाम जो कैदी हैं बिलाखिर वो अपने प्यारों के गले मिलेंगे और अपने घरों को वापस जाएंगे। उन्होंने ये भी कहा कि मुज़ाकरात के लिए हर कोई हाँ, मुफाहमत के लिए हाँ और अमन के लिए हाँ कहे, मतलब हर कोई मुज़ाकरात के लिए, अमन के लिए, मुफाहमत के लिए हाँ कहे। इसी तरह अगर गज़ा में जो रिहेबिलिटेशन प्रोसेस है उसकी बात की जाए तो फ़लस्तीनी खबरसा एजेंसी ने बताया है कि सरकारी कम्युनिकेशन ऑफिस के सरबराह के हवाले से उन्होंने बताया है कि जनाब फ़लस्तीनी हुकूमत गज़ा में बहाली और इंसानी हमदर्दी की कोशिशों के मनसूबों को मरबूत करने के लिए इस मीटिंग में वजारत समाजी तरक्की, वजारत तामीरात आमा, वजारत सेहत, वजारत पानी और तवानाई के हकाम और हलाल अहमर के नुमाइंदे जो हैं वो शरीक होंगे और फिर एक स्ट्रेटजी बनाई जाएगी, एक हिकमत अमली बनाई जाएगी कि किस तरह जो इमदादी कार्रवाइयाँ हैं वो गज़ा में शुरू की जाएँ, किस तरह रिहेबिलिटेशन प्रोसेस जो है वो शुरू किया जाए, किस तरह जो वर्ल्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं उनके साथ कोऑर्डिनेशन की जाए, किस तरह जो इमदाद आ रही है उसको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट और मैनेज किया जाए। अच्छा, इसी तरह एक सरकारी बयान के मुताबिक हमास में इसराइली यरगमालियों को रेड क्रॉस मुंतकिल कर दिया गया है और अब IDF के हवाले किया जाना है। टाइम्स ऑफ इसराइल के मुताबिक इसराइली कैदियों को IDF के हवाले कर दिया गया है। उन्हें अहल खाना से मिलने से पहले इब्तदाई तिब्बी मुआयना और नफसियाती सहूलत का जायज़ा लिया जाएगा। मतलब ये कैदियों के को उनके घर पहुंचाने से पहले उनकी इंसानी सेहत का, नफसियाती सेहत का जो है वो जायज़ा लिया जाएगा। IDF ने तस्दीक की है कि तीनों जो यरगमाली इसराइल हैं उनको अपनी वापस ज़मीन पर पहुंचा दिया गया है, ये कहना है IDF का। इसी तरह नाज़रीन मीडिया रिपोर्ट्स हैं कि जो फ़लस्तीनी कैदी रिहा होने वाले हैं उनमें 69 ख़वातीन शामिल हैं और 21 मर्द शामिल हैं। इनमें 2 17 साल, एक कम उम्र लड़का और लड़की और एक 15 साल का लड़का भी शामिल है। नाज़रीन, फ्रांस के जो सदर हैं उन्होंने फ़लस्तीनी सदर से फ़ोन पर बात करते हुए कहा है कि इसराइल और हमास के दरमियान जंगबंदी के बाद गज़ा में फ़लस्तीनी हुक्मरानी वापसी ज़रूरी है। मतलब ये वो चीज़ है जो मैं आपको बार कह रहा था कि
Tears of joy and relief as 90 Palestinian prisoners released from Israeli jails return home. Thousands turned out across the occupied West Bank to witness loved ones reunite. But for many, the memories of what they were forced to endure will remain.
I left hell and now I'm in heaven. We're all out of hell. They used to violate us, beat us, fire tear gas towards us. They used to count us while our heads were down on the floor. Suddenly they would enter the cells and fire gas towards us. They said bad words at us. There's no food, no sweets, no salt. There's nothing.
Women and children are the first to be freed in phase 1 of a long-awaited ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners are expected to be released over a 6-week period.
They were treating us like animals. They give us little time to go out of the prison cells. At 1 p.m. we leave the cells like chickens, and then we were returned to our cells.
Hours earlier, Hamas released 3 female Israeli captives held in Gaza. Doron Prisha, Emily Damari and Romy Gonen. They were reunited with their families after spending 15 months in captivity. Hundreds watched the events unfold in Tel Aviv.
It was very stressful days, not knowing if she's going to be on the list or not. And now seeing her and see that she can walk.
As the ceasefire took hold, some of the Palestinian forcibly displaced by Israel's war returned to Rafah, Khan Yunis and Jabalia. Many were faced with devastation to find their homes flattened and left unrecognizable.
We came here this morning as they announced the ceasefire. We came with hope, thinking we might find a single room, anything simple, just a small shelter to protect us. But when we arrived, we found this, tragic. From the moment we reached Jabalia, we knew nobody had been spared. We realized we wouldn't find a single house standing.
Like many, Amal has nowhere else to go, and she says she will have to rebuild her life and that of her families with what she has salvaged. As part of the deal, 8 convoys from the United Nations World Food Programme have begun entering the Gaza Strip through crossings in both the north and south.
I wish I could go back and help. We wish that every minute that passes we could go to these people. They have no food, water, medicine or shelter. All of their houses have been hit by strikes. They have nothing left.
With more than 2 million people entirely dependent on food assistance, many homeless and without any income, the trucks will need to keep coming. Tariq Abazoum, Al Jazeera, Deir al-Balah, Palestine.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.
पूरी दुनिया इस वक्त उसका खैर मकदम कर रही है और कतर के वजारत खारजा के तर्जुमान ने भी इस मुआहदे पर अमल दरामद के हवाले से खैर मकदम किया है और उन्होंने तस्दीक कर दी है कि जी उसका नफाज हो चुका है और हम उसमें सालिस हैं। अच्छा, कतर, अमेरिका और मिस्र ने काहिरा में एक मॉनिटरिंग बॉडी कायम कर दी है। नाज़रीन, ये 3 कंट्रीज़ थे जो कि मुज़ाकरात में पेश थे और इन्हीं तीनों की सालिस में ये मुआहदा जो है वो तय पाया गया था। तो अब इन्होंने काहिरा में एक मॉनिटरिंग बॉडी कायम कर दी है जो इस बात को यकीनी बनाएगी कि इसराइल और फ़लस्तीन के दरमियान जो जंगबंदी की शराइत हैं उन पर अमल किया जाए। अब ये उन लोगों के लिए खबर है जो कि ये कह रहे थे कि इसराइल मुआहदे की पासदारी नहीं करेगा, उस पर अमल दरामद नहीं करेगा। देखिए, ये बात बिल्कुल ठीक है कि इसराइल ना तो जंगबंदी के हवाले से मुज़ाकरात करना चाहता था, लेकिन मुज़ाकरात हुए। इसराइल ना जंगबंदी चाहता था, उस पर अमल दरामद चाहता था, वो जंगबंदी पर अमल दरामद भी हुआ। अब जो लोग ये कह रहे हैं कि वो इसकी पासदारी नहीं करेगा, तो पासदारी भी उसको करनी पड़ेगी। जिस तरह बाकी चीजें वो नहीं चाहता तो उसने की, अब पासदारी भी उसको करनी पड़ेगी क्योंकि इसमें अमेरिका डायरेक्टली इन्वॉल्व है और अमेरिका, कतर और मिस्र इसमें सालसी का किरदार अदा कर रहे हैं। इसीलिए उन्होंने एक मॉनिटरिंग बॉडी भी तश्कील दे दी है।
Why on earth they don't do it? Let them do it. Let them hang these people and get this scum out of the society so that everybody could live in peace. See the happiness and joy with all that destruction, having no home, no clothes, no bed, nothing. They are still going back to the graves of their ancestors and going back to north, south, center and there. It's a matter of shame. Now after 16 months, letting them food and water and then what they are animals. Would you like to do this thing even to a cat or a dog you have in your house? So you can imagine the way these youths think. They don't think about anybody. When they spit on the Christians carrying only a cross in the streets of Jerusalem, you can imagine how much they hate the others, whether they are Christians, whether they are Muslims, whether they are Arabs or Bedouins, or they are even the Jews who are dark skinned or from Africa. They are discriminated. So I think the world has to get together to get rid of this. They are not normal people. They are not even human. So I think it's about time I show you the glimpse of the joy. See the difference between the people who've been released from the Israeli jails, how they were tortured, and look at those hostages with all those bombs, all those destruction. They kept them fed, they kept them happy, they gave them medicine. You have even bandage on the girl, those 3 girls been released. This is the difference of the treatment by the Arabs. You call them, that they are terrorists. I think you should be ashamed of that. How could terrorists feed the people who they had their prisoners? Their prisoners are called hostages, while the Israelis, who have no right, they came here as refugees, and now they took them, took their land, took their groves, took their homes, destroyed everything, and in their jails they tortured them. So it is about time, I think, Israel, or especially the Zionists, have no right to exist. They must be eliminated. And here, already this 77 years they've been in power now, and this is about time. No, I think, Israeli or Jewish state has lasted in the world in the history more than 80 years. Most 99% at 77. It is already 77 years. یونیورسل ٹیلی ویژن کو سبسکرائب کرنا نہ بھولیں. اس کے بعد بیل بٹن پہ کلک کریں اور اپنے کامنٹس کے سیکشن میں اپنے قیمتی جو خیالات کا اظہار ضرور